Hi, everyone. My name is Betsy Ames. I'm the Executive Director for the Northeast HERS Alliance. We're delighted to have you with us for our April 1st conversation with DOER on HERS ratings and ADUs. Thank you for taking time to be here today. And a special thank you to Ian and Becca from the Department of Energy Resources for speaking today, and to Emily Anderson, our Northeast HERS Administrative Assistant, for moderating today. Emily?
Hello, everyone. In today's webinar, we are inviting the rater community's feedback on the current HERS targets in the stretch and specialized energy codes. We look forward to hearing any and all opinions on the limits set for existing buildings, new construction, and ADUs. Before we begin the program, we have a couple of announcements. Any HERS next HERS rater training class is starting on April 13th, and there are still slots available in the class. The final registration deadline is Friday, April 3rd, which is this Friday. So if you know anyone who would like to register, please send them the link that will be in the chat. And there's some information on the screen here, as well as at the links on our website. Additionally, we have our Summer 2026 Rating Field Inspector and HERS Modeler Mentorship Program coming up, which will start on June 29th. The application deadline is May 4th. And we will also be sharing the link for that. So if you or anyone that you know would be interested in this, please feel free to get the word out so that way we can have a full class. Now let's go over a few details about today's webinar. It will be 90 minutes long total, and after our announcements, the main presentation will be about 60 minutes long. We will be taking questions from the audience throughout the presentation. Some audience reminders. While the speakers are presenting, attendees should participate in listen-only mode, but can interact with the speakers by using the questions pane or unmuting yourself to speak. There will be a moment for questions and discussion at the end of each slide once the presentation begins. If you have questions during the session, though, please feel free to type them into the questions pane and we will address them throughout the program. If time does not allow us to answer all the questions, our speakers will do their best to follow up with you after the session. If you would like a copy of the slide deck, please download the handout from the handout pane on your screen. I would also like to encourage you all to become active on the HERS Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram pages, which will be shared as well. It's a great way to keep up with what we're doing, and we really appreciate you supporting our work by sharing our posts with your social media network. We'll post those links shortly. Also, as you exit the webinar, an electronic survey will appear on your screen. Please take a minute to complete this survey so that we may measure your satisfaction level regarding today's program. Your feedback is very important to us, and your response will be taken into consideration by the Any HERS Professional Development Committee so that we can continue to improve our webinars. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our speakers. Ian Finlayson is the Deputy Director of Building Codes and Policy at the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, where he works on the policy development and implementation of a number of Massachusetts energy efficiency priorities. These include the state building energy codes, the Mass Save energy efficiency plans, and other building decarbonization programs. Also speaking today is Becca Edson, who is the decarbonization architect for the DOER, focusing on the energy codes and education. She previously worked for many years as a residential architect. We have a lot to cover today, so I will be turning it over to our speakers. All right, thank you guys.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I guess we'll jump right in if that's all right. As mentioned, we're really excited to hear your feedback. So we're hoping to stop after each topic and hear what you have to say. So hopefully the technology allows this to happen pretty seamlessly. But these are on the slide that you see now. These are the main topics that we really would love to get HERS rater feedback on. First off, the current state, like what's happening currently with HERS and what we've proposed for the upcoming public feedback on the codes, which will be happening sometime this spring. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on the additions and major alterations ratings. ADUs are a hot topic, as I'm sure you know. We have some questions for this group on ADUs, specifically around ADUs that are built within or attached to existing homes. And then we'd love to talk about embodied carbon credits and ecotropes beta report. So this is a scope. And so I think that what will happen is after each topic, I'll stop and ask if people have any feedback or thoughts they want to share, and hopefully that will work well. But if not, everyone is always welcome to email us with feedback after this, and we'll be sharing email addresses at the end. So next slide, please. All right, so, oh, sorry, slide 10, yep, okay. So this slide shows what is going to be proposed for the public comment period, which should be happening this spring. We had to open the stretch and specialized codes up to make some pretty specific changes, but we're taking advantage of doing that to do some cleanup on the codes. So the red text that you see on the slide shows you know, pretty minor stuff that we're updating, just italicizing where necessary. We're removing the change of use. And then you'll see with footnote D, we're talking about how the ADU is an ADU regardless of how it's attached or not attached to the existing primary residence. So this is the current, these numbers though, the 42 to 45 and the 65 to 75 for existing and AD for existing reflect the current state of HERS rating affairs in Massachusetts. And what we really want to focus on today is hearing from you all if you think that the numbers for major alterations and additions are too strict or too lenient. Are the accessory dwelling unit numbers hard to hit given the small size? So based on this current state, we have some following slides to go over with you. Next slide, please. Okay, so first off, oops, additions and major alterations. So 65 for mixed fuel buildings, 70 for all electric, and 75 for solar electric and all electric. As a reminder, a major alteration or addition is a type of project that triggers the need for a HERS rating in stretch and specialized communities. So this is a project that is extensive enough or the addition is large enough that we are requiring a HERS rating for the existing plus renovated or existing plus addition. We have found that, or we're hoping that we'll find out from you today that these numbers are accurate to what they should be, that they're not impossible and they're not too easy and they're not too hard. But we'd love to hear if anyone has any feedback on the current rating level that we've set for these types of projects. And Ian, do you have anything that I'm forgetting to mention?
Yeah, no, only that I think we should maybe also talk about the accessory dwelling unit option right now, and then maybe have a broad discussion.
Okay, so maybe the next slide then, please, and then we'll talk about this. So slide 12, please. Oh, actually, no. Slide, well, you know what, I'll talk about this because this is important. This is part of it. So major alterations and additions, I'm not sure if you all get as confused as most of Massachusetts does on what defines an extensive alteration or level 3 alteration. We're leaning on some wording in the ICC code text that's not great to begin with. So, so part of the way that we're addressing potential updates in the public comment session on the codes is trying to clean up some of the wording for what triggers a HERS rating. So the top section of the top yellow box that you see, R503.1.5, this is what is going to be released for public comment soon. So it's showing how we are, doing a little bit of cleanup in the basic text for number one, like saying it meets or exceeds 100%, because some sticklers have pointed out that if you exceed 100%, that doesn't make a lot of sense. We've added item number 3 for the public's consideration, specifically because we've had plenty of building inspectors or builders or designers reach out to us and ask, well, what happens in the situation where you have an alteration that's pretty big and an addition that's pretty big on the same project for the same permit, and neither of them independently would trigger the need for a HERS rating, but together they're both substantial enough that we feel like this house is sort of sneaking past needing a HERS rating. So we are proposing this third trigger for a HERS rating when the alteration exceeds 1,000 square feet and the addition exceeds 600 square feet. We're thinking that that's a pretty fair threshold for needing to have a HERS rating for this project. And then the second yellow box below that has the star, this is not currently in the public comments, but we're hoping it will be proposed in the public comments. Part of, or a lot of room is taken up, a lot of oxygen is taken up in the room by a constant debate about like what is an extensive alteration. You then rely on work area, and work area is a very vague term in the code. And I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of time spinning around trying to figure out what exactly is an extensive alteration, what's a level 3 alteration. Some really smart people have figured out ways to get around this, and that's just exhausting for everybody. So we are hoping to bring in a new definition which would replace extensive alteration and level 3 alteration. And this would be substantial project, which just very clearly, hopefully clearly, states basically where you're exposing more than 50% of the thermal envelope of the walls or ceiling of the thermal envelope, then you need to get a HERS rating. So replace the IRC definition and the IEBC definitions of alterations that have really gummed up the works a little bit. So we'd like feedback on that. And if we can go to slide 13, please. ADUs take up a lot of space right now in the codes world. When we proposed the ADU ratings that came into effect in February 2025, I think a lot of the focus was on sort of like backyard ADUs, like, oh, well, these will be separate units built in the backyard. So we set the ratings numbers for, not as strict as new construction, but still pretty strict. What we're hearing from a lot of people in Massachusetts is that a lot of ADUs are coming forward. They're being made within the existing building, either the attic or basement, or they're nested within, or they're an extension, maybe a 1-wall or 2-wall extension off of the existing home. And in some cases, these are basically pre-existing apartments that now want to see the light of day and get permitted. They're already finished. People are upset about having to get a HERS rating that's pretty strict, possibly for existing construction. We would really like to hear from this group if you think that in this public comment session that's upcoming, should we consider having ADUs that are built within or attached to existing homes? Should they have the existing or the alterations and additions HERS ratings instead of the new construction HERS ratings? So I just threw a lot at you. Does anyone have any thoughts?
Yeah,
So we do have some comments here.
Ian might want to say something first.
Go for it.
I was just going to say maybe we could go back to the slide with the table for HERS ratings. and then we can sort of jump around from there
Yeah.
if need be.
Yep, this is great.
Ian, did you have more you wanted to say about this?
No, I think we'd love to hear from the audience if anyone has thoughts or opinions to share.
Okay, great. We do have some comments here, so I'm just going to go through in the order that they came in. Why is there no Excel file for low global warming potential concrete? This should be 100% been done not by raters. There should be heavily outlined with forms for builders and their suppliers and the building departments to own this, not the raters. That is just not possible. There are 3 or 4 separate concrete pours per home. Forms are needed. Significant structure for building departments is needed. Cheating is inevitable without it, was the first comment.
That's a great comment, and that is predicting something we have later in the agenda. So we did want to ask and get feedback on that.
All right, we'll circle back to that.
We're working on it. We partner with the Clean Energy Center on this. If folks know, they've been working on this project for almost 3 years at this point. So I think we're just figuring out who's on first here, but we recognize the need. So appreciate that comment.
Great. Thank you for that. So additions and major alterations. More definitive guidance should be available so that persons other than the rater has to determine the score and requirements, is one comment. And then immediately following was raters are being asked too much on this versus guidance at building departments. They need handouts. Yes, the language is very poor. And then a follow-up comment on that. All right, so there's a series of comments here. Builders think in terms of surface areas, and it is unclear if you are looking at square footages. 2 different things. What is the definition of a tiny home, and what is happening now when we have change of use? And then can
we jump in for a sec?
Yeah.
First of all, thanks to everyone for their feedback. This is fantastic. So agree on the handouts needed for building departments to have at the desk so people can see, you know, will my project need this, so it's not falling on you all. I'd love to hear anybody weigh in on if they thought that the move to a substantial project definition would help with the confusion, since the extensive alteration and level 3 alteration language is so terrible. So I'd love to hear that. But tiny homes, yeah. So tiny homes we're going to talk about those in a few slides, but we can talk about them now too. Tiny homes are 400 square foot homes. They're currently Appendix AQ in the IRC 2021, and Massachusetts. The BBRS officially adopted that. So we, after the fact, threw those into the ADU column because they're so tiny. And we didn't want them to be having to follow the 42 and 45 rating numbers of new construction. So that's why you see in the red on this slide that tiny homes are proposed in red text, because we thought that they could meet the 52 to 58. Some people might say that a tiny home is so tiny that it shouldn't get a HERS rating, but we'd love to hear that feedback. So, is there anything I forgot to answer?
We had a question here to please explain the substantial thing again.
Okay, yeah, so can we go to slide 12, please? Okay, so so the text at the bottom, you will unfortunately not see this in the red lines that come out during the public comment period, and that public comment period hopefully will happen sometime soon. We're waiting for it to be opened up by the state. We're all waiting for regulations to get reviewed. As soon as the public comment period on the code red lines opens, we will email everyone. We'll try to get the word out in every direction we can. So we're hoping that somebody will email this in if they think it's a good idea, but basically this substantial project definition would be would replace the definition, the extensive alteration and level 3 alteration definitions, because those are not great definitions and rely on other language in the ICC code that's also not wonderful. We're hoping that this substantial project is more definitive and clear for energy code users, and that this would just, you know, this isn't relying on square footage. It's not relying on a vague idea of like, how do you determine work area? This is just saying if more than 50% of a dwelling unit's, okay, well, I just said area, but okay, so it is area, but anyway, if more than 50% of dwelling units total walls and ceiling that constitute envelope are open to framing, then you've triggered the need to do a HERS rating. So that's,
And
yeah.
Just to add one clarification, so this is not changing the trigger for additions. That would stay the same. This is just in the alterations section. And part of the reason we're doing this is that the ICC themselves are removing the extensive alteration definition, or have already done that in the 2024 I-code. So that was going away anyway. And then level 3 alteration is really designed for fire safety, and that's going to stay in the IUBC. But we're thinking for what triggers a HERS rating, we can move to something that's more thermal envelope related, as probably a clearer, easier to determine and agree on for both building officials and HERS raters. So that's the concept. Alterations that are smaller than this would not require a HERS rating. They could be done as an option, unless they are an ADU, and then that's why we get into the conversation about should nested ADUs or ADUs that are part of an existing building have a more lenient HERS rating. So there's this kind of broader discussion about where's the right level for HERS ratings of different types. But we think it's trickiest in these existing building situations.
Yeah, and just to make sure that I clearly stated, so if substantial project was to replace extensive alteration and level 3 alteration, then this would basically read, you've triggered the need for a HERS rating when your project meets the qualification of substantial project and exceeds 1,000, and the alteration exceeds 1,000 square feet, or meets or exceeds 100% of the existing conditioned floor area. So,
So we had an additional question here. Tiny homes need a 75 score. It might as well say all electric, inverse relationship between size and low score.
okay, so so 75 is what someone in the audience thinks would be the best case for a tiny home to be able to meet if all electric?
It just says tiny homes need a score of 75.
Okay.
So the person that posted that wants to raise your hand. If folks want to speak directly to the presenters, we'll give it a shot at unmuting folks. It helps to be in a place where you're not going to have a lot of background noise so people can hear you. But if you'd like to come off mute, please raise your hand and we can see about getting you unmuted. But for now, yeah, that's the question is on 75.
Yeah, and I mean, we obviously want to start the conversation today on this. We're recognizing that you maybe haven't heard these questions in advance, so we're not expecting to like definitively answer it today. But between this conversation and then the public comment period, and folks can always send comments to our stretch code at mass.gov inbox, then we will use that to help decide. I'll also add that, like, I spent some time with the ResNet SDC 300 committee, and you know, folks at ResNet make the case that they've gotten better at adjusting for smaller homes, but I think what we just heard in that comment about 75 is that it's still the case that smaller homes have a harder time getting to lower HERS scores. So that's why we have ADUs with a different number already. And that's why we're interested in the sort of tiny home question.
Right. We have a couple questions here about change of use. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, yeah. Ian, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in the commercial code, projects that are change of use are allowed to follow the prescriptive pathway. And we felt for the residential, as we're trying to incentivize more housing in Massachusetts, if we had a commercial project changing over to residential, low-rise residential, so it would be in this R code, that we shouldn't require a HERS because we're just trying to increase housing. And so for change of use, let's just be glad that we've increased housing and they would follow the prescriptive pathway. So that's part of this proposed code change.
Which is not to say they couldn't follow the HERS pathway, but they wouldn't be required to, whereas in the past they would be required to. So it makes prescriptive path the default option. Yeah, usually with res check, because of the trade-offs that you're going to have in an existing building. But this would, yeah, allow a lot more flexibility for those projects.
Okay. There's a comment here that says attached ADUs should stay at the HERS 52, 55, 58. The person that commented said they're open to nested basements, attics being higher.
Okay, so maybe have attached be in a separate category than attics, basements, and nested. Okay.
And then there's a comment that says it's super hard to get the air source heat pumps down into ADUs since they can't have a full depth basement and lack of space in the dwelling unit. Any comments on that, or just move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to stop short of telling people how to design HVAC, but yeah, I recognize there's some challenges with ducted systems in some of these smaller units.
All right, there's a comment here that says, yes, a definition of substantial renovation with CMR codes versus level 3 and national codes should help, but I'd make the definition longer and clearer.
Okay.
And public comment will allow you to send longer, clearer
Yes.
options for us
Please.
to consider.
Please feel free to wordsmith.
Yeah. There's a comment here that just says DHW, I assume that's domestic hot water, but I'm not sure what that, whoever posted that, if you want to say more, please put more in. There's another comment that says arguably RA versus RNC should pertain to change in occupancy and or capacity for occupants and to change division in thermal zones. Should I read the next?
Please.
All right, let's see. So blower door is too hard on a tiny home. What if they don't, let's see, what if they don't want from foam in a small home due to off-gassing?
Yeah, I mean, that's all part of the figuring out what the right HERS rating is, you know, one of the penalties is the CFM rating. When we talk to the HERS ResNet folks, Feel like that's at least getting better, but it'd be great to get, your experience as HERS raters in field on this.
Yeah, and again, if people want to send, you can send public comment anytime, and I'll put it in the proper folder. But if people feel strongly about where they think the tiny homes should land on the HERS index, if at all, the more public comment we've received, the better, because that's not set in stone. That's in red. So we'd love to.
Yeah.
Someone
And
here is
also,
saying that.
please state if you have like real world experience, because it's one thing to speculate about tiny homes. Not many people have built them yet. And we understand the hypothetical challenges, but if anyone has real world experience with units that small, that would be particularly valuable.
Okay. There's a comment here that says that tiny homes have a different infiltration rate. It's not ACH 50.
Right, it's CFM per square foot. But since we don't have a limit that really matters when we're doing a HERS rating, it's more that that's an input into the model.
Okay.
So
I do see that we have one hand raised here. Are you open to taking a comment directly from the audience?
Yeah, that'd be great.
All right, so Eric, we're going to go ahead and unmute you. And you may need to unmute yourself. All right, I'm not hearing Eric. All right, we'll have to circle back to that. We are getting comments coming into the panel, the chat panel. All right, so there's a comment on a slide. It says this slide is like a 10 by 10 decision tree. Can you pull them apart better so a builder can read it easier? I'm not sure which slide that was in reference to. And then blower door is a 5-point swing variable, the most impactful variable. All right, so the reference code defines it as CMF by foot squared surface area. I think that's in reference to the tiny home. And then putting air source heat pump hybrid water heaters in ADUs is a challenge. They use heat from the unit to produce hot water, dispense cold air, are noisy, and require a large area to operate properly. Straight electric water heaters add many points to the score, so that is a challenge on these ADUs and tiny homes. If somebody has a blower door at the end, they can't fix the home and then pass. It's too late. And then most change of use is going to require substantial work. I think removing the HERS requirement may be a slippery slope to confuse building inspectors. All right. Let's see here. I think that giving examples for change of use, extensive alteration, level 3 alteration would be helpful for all examples that include the math, etc., to help clear up the words.
Definitely, and we can update our technical guidance document to show images after the code has made its way through the red lines.
All right, Ecotrope can do many models as examples to test the scoring on tiny homes. It would take me 2 hours to do the what ifs.
Yeah, so maybe we can capture and collect the comments from today.
You'll get a copy of all of the comments, yes.
Yeah, great. So, so if folks do put things in the comments, we can respond now, but we can also digest them offline.
That's great.
As well.
All right. So there are split HPWHs. Have many people tried them in ADUs or ducting? Yes, and then some of these comments go back a little bit further, and it doesn't say which slide they reference. Someone's asking for some visual examples, something that a builder can digest. This should be really easy for some visuals. Build 10 tiny home examples with reasonable specs and see what the score comes to. Make that the top range of the max HERS for tiny homes. Aren't tiny homes an extreme edge case outside of Cambridge?
Yeah, we don't necessarily anticipate a lot of tiny homes. I think there'll be a lot more volume in ADUs that are bigger than the tiny home size. But a lot of times folks don't have a lot of space and they do want to add that unit. So I think a question we're grappling with is, at the moment we have just one HERS value for all ADUs, including tiny homes, including new construction, exterior ADUs, and basement conversion, all in that same bucket. And so the direction we're thinking of going in is differentiating between an ADU that's in some way part of an existing building versus the exterior ones, and then also, do we also want to have a two-tier system for size, and is tiny home kind of one of the cutoffs? So hopefully we've kind of got that idea across to you today, and you have time now and during the public comment period to give us some feedback on that.
Great. All right, there's another comment here that is the best place to put the substantial project in the R503.1.5 or better in the energy code?
Yeah, so R503.1.5 here is in the chapter 5 of the energy code. So it is, it's in that alterations section of the energy code. So yeah, that's why we're looking at this language here. I think maybe we can take a few more comments, and then just looking at time, maybe we should go into other topics for our agenda.
Great. Well, you tell me when you're ready to move on. We do have a couple more comments here. Using the surface area definition, when building inspectors have square footage data from the assessor's database, it could still prove to be problematic. And then some of these are very short. Somebody likes the definition, but it doesn't say in reference to what. Substantial project definition, I think they said they liked that definition. That's what that was. If then, but decision trees are killing us. Yeah, so those are the comments that we've gotten so far. Okay, so Becca, do you think maybe we should move on?
Yeah, let's move on. And this is fantastic feedback, so thank you, everybody. If we could go to slide 14, I think. All right, so we kind of talked about this. We got excited ahead of time, but yeah, again, like, how do we deal with tiny houses? Tiny houses made their way into 780 CMR after we'd already submitted last year's code update. So we're kind of trying to play catch up and just figure out how does the energy code address tiny homes tiny houses. I actually haven't received any questions about an actual tiny house project yet to the stretch code inbox. Received lots of questions about EDUs, so maybe this will be a little bit more of a unicorn, but we still would like to know how to deal with them. So again, like, we'll share the email at the end. Feel free to flood my inbox with your thoughts and feelings on tiny homes. Feedback is helpful. Next slide, please. All right, Ian, you can take this.
Yeah, so up until now, when we were showing the table of HERS ratings, that was taken from the stretch code and the specialized code language. We want to pivot now and talk about the next version of the base code. Now, the base code in Massachusetts is only in effect in 50 mostly small communities. The bigger communities that still have the base code are Fall River and that region of southeastern Mass, and then some smaller towns in central and western Mass. So it's not nowhere, but it's not where there's a lot of permit activity. Nonetheless, we will be working with the BBRS to update the base code for the 11th edition, where we move from 2021 and in some cases 2018 I-codes up to the 2024 I-code cycle. So the table that we're showing here is what is currently proposed and approved by the BBRS's Energy Advisory Committee, which DOER has been heavily engaged in, and does have a HERS rater and a ResNet member on that advisory committee. So that will wend its way through the BBRS and eventually go out to public comment. But while this is sort of fresh, this is just recently voted on by the Energy Advisory Committee, we thought we would share these numbers with a broader audience of HERS raters, i.e. you guys, and see if you had any reactions to this. And so you can see right away that a lot of the same topics that we just talked about are addressed here. Just to go from sort of left to right, with this being the base code and not the stretch code, you'll see that the new construction HERS ratings are more lenient. 49 for mixed fuel, aka gas and propane buildings, 52 for all electric or mixed fuel with solar, and then 55 if you do all electric and solar. Then the embodied carbon credit that we'll get to in more depth later, we want to keep that 3-point credit that we have in the stretch code and apply it also in the base code. So that's what you're seeing here, just 3 points for each category. And then using that level also for ADUs, where here we're really starting to think about ADUs as exterior or maybe addition ADUs and tiny homes. And then you'll see in that last column, which used to be alterations, additions, and change of use, the change of use is gone. And we're introducing this term ADU conversions. And that might be the definition that we use for ADUs that are conversions of basements or attics, or nested ADUs, or maybe some ADU additions, depending on how much it's addition versus alteration. So we're putting forward this language now just because the BBRS process takes a long time, and because energy is just one of the chapters getting updated. So there are, there's activity in all of the BBRS committees that inform the 2024 codes. So we just wanted to flag this for people. It's less urgent and pressing than the stretch code and specialized code for two reasons. One, this won't go out to public comment for a while. It might be next fall. It could even be longer than that. We don't control that process. It's run by a different agency, but we do try and get good information to the board on this topic. And then two, this is just less communities, less permits using this. But as you can see, we're trying to be somewhat consistent. So I don't know if there's any like immediate feedback on that, or if we can go to the next slide.
We do have a couple comments, and I see also a hand raised. So Robert, would you like to unmute and say your comment? You would need to unclick your microphone button there, Robert, and speak directly to the presenters. There you go.
Sorry, Betsy, that was a mistake. I put a comment in the chat, so just
Okay,
go that route.
we'll go that route. Okay, great, thank you. All right, so let's see. So a garage less than 1,000 square feet was converted to an ADU. The inspector insists on the ADU HERS when it was a challenge to get to 55. I think the existing building, sorry, 1 second here, it's not giving me the whole comment. I think the existing building provision should apply.
Yeah, that's helpful. So, I mean, that's suggesting that in that case, that ADU should be considered for the alterations additions example. We do see garage conversions as not uncommon, and the challenge there often is with the foundation. I'm not sure that our proposal at the moment would solve for that case if it's a detached garage. We'd instead probably want to see some thermal break in that foundation. So it's a good question. Like if there's an existing structure that's not the main building, does that become an alteration or addition? And maybe we can take that back and think about it.
Great. And then we have a series of 4 short comments here from Tom. Are new homes going to go up from 42 to 49? Is this the stretch code, not the base code? Can Ian only talk to the 49 as the stretch code, and is this just new construction?
Yeah, so this slide is all about the base code, not the stretch code. So that 49 would be the HERS requirement in communities that are still on the base energy code. This wouldn't change the stretch code or the specialized code, and we don't really have plans to change that anytime soon. But if you have comments about that, say the 42 or the 45, the stretch code values, then the upcoming public comment on the stretch code and specialized code would be the time to make those comments. So we've got multiple things going on with the base code being updated and us having this opportunity to get comment on the stretch code. So I hope that's not confusing, but that's why you're seeing 49 here. It would be a base code number.
Okay, to continue with that, why would anyone choose a base code of 49? 42 is killing us in stretch code.
I mean, that's interesting to hear because we're seeing quite a lot of projects navigate that, but maybe you can follow up with some examples of challenges with 42 because we'd want to see them. Yeah, the thought being that stretch code would be more stringent than base code. That's where we are with the 49, but the 42, 45, again, getting feedback on how challenging that is and what some of the measures are needed to get to those numbers would be super helpful for us.
Okay. And then one other comment here, oversized heat pumps are very inefficient. I don't think I have ever seen a properly sized heat pump. The result is that heat pump heat pumps probably get a bad rap for being expensive to operate.
Yeah, sizing of heat pumps is definitely something that there seems to be a learning curve on in the industry. So I understand that sentiment. As someone that did a conversion in my own house, persuading the HVAC installer to downsize was what took most of my time. So I think particularly for retrofits, we see oversizing. In new construction, hopefully it's a little easier to get that right. But anyway.
If there's
Another
anything,
comment here is, I would like to second the comment on the new construction 42. Reaching 42 for a mixed fuel project simply drives up the building costs and makes the building new homes more unaffordable.
Okay, I mean, that's good feedback for us to hear. And if folks want to submit examples of projects that are trying to do that, I mean, I think we're probably seeing more people follow the electric path than going for HERS 45. And maybe that's a good segue to talk about embodied carbon and the 3 points that gives you to either take mixed fuel to 45 or all electric to 48. Certainly with the bigger projects that we tend to have more input with, they're almost exclusively going with that all electric pathway. And we're curious to see how much they are going to use that embodied carbon credit option to go further. So I think we're seeing more HERS 45 with heat pumps and electric water heating than we're seeing mixed fuel buildings at the moment. But
can we go to the next slide, please? I think we can start jumping into the embodied carbon credits.
Yeah, that's a good segue.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Becca, do you want to lead us on?
Oh, sure. As I'm sure you all know, hopefully, starting in February of last year, so February 2025, we introduced we introduced embodied carbon credits into the Massachusetts Code conversation by starting out with insulation and concrete, so low global warming potential insulation and low GWP concrete. Use of either of those could net 3 additional HERS points to the score. I think we've mostly seen this take off with concrete, although we have heard some insulation, some projects using insulation. We heard the comment already for sure about how people would like to see a concrete calculator, and we have that on our list of things to do ASAP. And we're also working with the Mass CEC on hosting an up-to-date Excel spreadsheet of different suppliers in Massachusetts who offer the mixes that get those 3 points. But this image that you're looking at now is the insulation calculator that you can find on our website. We'd love to hear people's thoughts, feedback. I will note that Ecotrope has released its beta test that we're going to talk about at the end of this. It's come up with a new and improved reporting sheet that better incorporates these embodied carbon credit points so that they read clearly to the building inspector, and so that you're not having to wonder if you're supposed to paperclip on a sheet or whatnot. Ian, do you have more to say about that?
I mean, given that it's hard to have like a direct conversation here, maybe in the comments we'd be interested in whether you've had a go at using either the insulation credit or the concrete credit, and then if you have, if you find this insulation Excel sheet useful, if not, or even if you do, like any improvements or challenges that you found, we'd love to get feedback on that. particularly as I think we'll be working soon on a sort of simpler but similar calculator for the concrete credit. Then any input that you give us now will just help sort of with that development process. And then with this insulation calculator, we did sort of beta test it with maybe 5 or 6 HERS rating companies. And so we'll probably do the same approach with concrete. So if you're a HERS rater or a company that would be interested in being part of helping us beta test this concrete calculator, then maybe let us know that in the comments as well. And so, yeah, maybe we can, and so the next slide, I think, is just showing the website for Mass CEC on concrete. So I don't know if you want to take them one at a time and talk about the insulation and the concrete separately, but I'd say maybe just pause here and take comments on both. And,
yeah, we've got a bunch of comments here, and I'll also remind folks that if you would like to speak directly to the presenters, you can raise your hand and we can get you unmuted if you'd like to talk. In the meantime, I will read through some of the comments here. So going back to the 45 or the 42 question, 42 drives risk through the roof. I'm getting fired over this up front after they fail. Again, in the burbs, builders and realtors cannot sell a home that is all electric. The all electric path is a city thing. It's killing the suburbs. So that's a comment on the previous section of the dialogue. Risk is not cost. All right, so insulation. Insulation is a non-starter. No one outside the high-rise downtown projects with architects can even navigate this. Insulation subs are flakes, no way. And then to continue with insulation, the insulation market is dominated by cheap foam, spray foam. Is there a way to have the carbon credits added into Ecotrope as a checkbox for the materials? I'll stop there and let you comment if you need to.
Yeah, no, those are all good comments, and we are aware that like foam has been growing market share, spray foam in particular, and so the insulation credit kind of helps like the cellulose or the wood fiber folks, and some of that is locally produced, and so that's one reason why we're interested in seeing if there's market for that. Again, we've seen it more with bigger developers who've got more time to test it, think about it. I can see like a one-off building, it's a lot of headache for not a lot of credit. But it'd be really interesting to hear if folks have seen examples where projects have looked at it and decided not to do it, or looked at it and decided to do it. And we don't get a lot of feedback directly. So we'd love to hear if you have stories, good or bad, in this space.
Great. All right, to continue with the comments, how about 5.1 page case studies on just the insulation global warming potential? Similar to the ERV was a separate comment. We've used insulation more than concrete. We send in a PDF of the Excel file along with the projected and confirmed HERS, especially for concrete. I have 10 guys who want to do concrete as they understand that the insulation subs are not able to pull this off. I work outside Route 128. Distance from Boston matters. And then one more comment here. Let me find it again. There. Going down from 45 to 42 is not the same as going down from 55 to 52. It becomes exponentially harder. Every improvement made at that level moves the needle on the HERS index only a fraction of a point instead of a whole point if you were at the 50+ range. I'll stop there if you have comments.
Yeah, and I'll just say we understand that. We understand that once you're in the 40s, there's like it's just harder, a lot harder. And so 3 points in the 40s is worth a lot more than 3 points in the 50s. Again, if you have like a specific example of a home that you're really struggling with, or a builder really wants to build and can't build, I think that's what's most helpful to us. And then it sounds like there was somebody there that has been using the credits for both insulation and concrete, but more insulation. So again, if there's any follow-up detail that you want to send us, or for folks that have been trying to use the calculator sheet, if you have any suggestions for improving it, we'd love to hear that. And then for concrete, at the moment, we're thinking that we generate an Excel sheet that's very similar in look and feel to the insulation one. It actually be a bit simpler because there's less calculation. It's really just, you know, accounting for the fact that there might be 3, 4, 6 different concrete deliveries depending on the project. And so helping folks do that weighted average is what we would kind of have a form designed to do. And then with the Clean Energy Center, we're really trying to get the attention, quite frankly, of some of the ready mix producers and try and make sure that they are a little more consumer friendly with smaller orders in particular. Because most, well, maybe I can't say most, many of the ready mix providers in Massachusetts have received grant funds to generate EPDs and have sourced better than average ready mix, which is what's required for this. So we know they can do it, but it isn't necessarily like a big portion of their volume. And so not all of them are that interested in supplying this market. So it's a little bit chicken and egg here, where we're trying to find the concrete ready mix providers that are enthusiastic about this and make it easier to get their information and their availability out on the web. So if you have suggestions on that front too, we'd be interested in that as well.
Great. All right, we have a few more comments here. So Tom has said he'll help beta test this, he said, on concrete, and you'll get his contact info in the comments we'll send after the presentation. So thank you for that, Tom. All right, the HERS 42 for mixed fuel is often resulting in needing exterior insulation. Well, I think it's a great idea. It adds costs and challenges with labor, and labor equals additional costs. I have a smaller home that I just did a projected rating on that requires R30 in the cavity and R5 continuous exterior insulation to pass. They will have mini splits and a boiler, 1.5 ACH, efficient ERV, and is just reaching 42. It's hard to have these conversations with homeowners that are trying to justify costs and challenges that just want to make sure they have backup heat if they lose power and want the choice of a heat source.
Yeah, so I mean, more on that would be helpful. I think hearing about these kind of cases where people are feeling thwarted or struggling is useful for us to understand. Great.
All right, another comment. I haven't seen a single ERV installed properly. Very few builders understand what are why they are required. As a HERS rater, I usually have to commission the installed unit. The ultimate result are units that don't get used or maintained. Building inspectors have a lot on their plate, but there really isn't anyone inspecting mechanicals. As a HERS rater, it isn't my responsibility to approve installations. There should be someone in the code enforcement community that enforces mechanicals.
Yeah, that's an interesting comment, because I think ventilation, it can be challenging and is sort of coming gradually into the region. One thing I'll say about the base code is that the Energy Advisory Committee is recommending energy or heat recovery ventilation for the 2024 code. It's required in all the climate zones north of us. So if you have thoughts on that, challenges with that, again, there's more time on the base code, but I think it'd be great to get feedback from folks on that question.
Great. Another comment is we have to put ourselves in the shoes of general contractors. There's subs as well as the clients. As raters, we understand energy modeling and making recommendations for compliance. They, however, do not. Regarding embodied carbon for concrete, most subcontractors will be skeptical at best, and most will likely not trust a different approach. Additionally, some clients are adamant on having a gas range for cooking. We also need to recognize that a vast majority of Massachusetts electricity is generated by natural gas. All electric homes are great, but can be very expensive to operate without the addition of renewable, it just went away, without the addition of renewable energy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a transition on the mixed fuel versus all electric front. We've actually been fairly pleasantly surprised that the bigger volume builders seem to have moved in the all electric direction pretty quickly. But I'm sure that varies by geography, and I'm sure there's a lot of smaller builders and a lot of clients that for whom this is a major transition. So yeah, it's helpful. Okay, looking at time, I'm thinking, Becca, we should keep going.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, Becca, I think this one's you.
Yeah, so again, we worked with Ecotrope, or we're still working with Ecotrope to create a beta report that's going to make the information more transparent and more visible and more clear, especially for the building inspectors. The building inspector community has been very vocal about how they have a hard time reading the reports, and also with the fact that there's 3 different energy codes in Massachusetts, not to mention the fossil fuel free pilot communities. How do they know that the target that their town requires is being met? So so we have been working with them. Some of you have probably tested out the beta report. I think you can choose to if you go to Ecotrope. They're still receiving feedback, although I think we've gotten pretty close to finalizing it, but it's not too late to give any feedback. This does a better job of rolling in the embodied carbon credits, the reporting for those, and again, just making it really super clear to the building inspector that what they're seeing passes or doesn't pass. So they don't have to wonder, like, is this form just a silly piece of paper, or like, what is it telling me? We have heard from some folks, and we don't have time to talk about it today, but I'd love to hear feedback. We have heard from some HERS raters about concerns with preliminary HERS ratings. I guess you call them HERCs, HERS certificates, with preliminary certificates being used as the final, and how do we safeguard against that happening and make sure that the final is either has a very clear stamp on it that makes it clear to the building inspector, this is the final one, this is signed, this is what you should be reading, not the initial preliminary. So if folks can send me emails about that and suggestions, I'll try to work on that. If you can go to the next slide, we have our contact information, I think. Yeah. So you can email me directly, or you can email the stretch code inbox, which goes to me and Ian. But again, it's never too early to send us public comment for the code revisions that will be opening up, or just in general, any concerns, questions, etc. If you can label them, if they are meant to be public comment, if you could label them as such so that I can add them to that batch. Ian and I are, our role is the stretch and specialized codes. That's what we're in charge of. But as Ian mentioned, we are working on the base code committee. So I know it's maybe confusing. Why are we talking about all 3 codes? It's because we're working on developing the Massachusetts adoption of the IECC 2024. So we're working on that too. So I guess my point is, if you have any energy code questions for any of the 3 or feedback, we can currently accept all of them. We're really grateful for any input, any feedback, because you all are the ones actually testing out these numbers and figuring this out. So we're grateful. Anything I'm forgetting?
I mean, maybe on the Ecotrope beta, I'd be curious again in the chat if folks have had a look at it or started using it. The one thing that we think is sort of new information or more important information than in the past is that sort of permit submission date. Essentially, for a building official, that's what determines what code the building has to comply with. And so I think that might be a new field, or there might be like a couple of date fields that are new. But again, those of you who we're not using the Ecotrope software or any other ResNet approved. So if you have feedback on that, I'm sure you can communicate with Ecotrope directly, but we'd also be interested. We can sort of advocate for things if you think that's helpful. Generally, the concept of delivering a clear sort of Massachusetts compliance report out of Ecotrope that tells a building official what HERS rating is needed for code compliance has been something that building officials have been asking for a while. And so we're very happy that with our partners in the Green Communities Division, we're funding this, but we want to get it right. And once folks are comfortable with this, we can see building officials wanting to make this mandatory. And so, again, we want feedback on that. Does anyone in the HERS community have concerns about this becoming like a construction document required submission? Yeah, so any thoughts on this Ecotrope beta code report?
So we did have a question here, unclear about this Ecotrope beta. Is this about samples?
No, not samples. So maybe I can have a go at describing it, but so if you're using the Ecotrope software, obviously it generates a lot of different reports. For example, there's one to like submit to the Mass Save program for the new construction program incentives. Obviously, there's the ResNet, final HERS certificate and so on. We're essentially working with Ecotrope to produce a Massachusetts-specific report. Again, that's essentially auto-generated based on what you already enter for HERS ratings with the addition of these date fields, so that you can print something out and give it to the building official that says, this single-family home project is, under the Massachusetts stretch code required to meet HERS 42 because it's a mixed-use building, and according to Ecotrope, it is passing that. So it's trying to give the building official more clarity on what's the code HERS rating requirement, and then is this a final rating that's meeting that. So it's essentially trying to address concerns from building officials that they are not always sure what HERS index level the project's supposed to meet based on having to check when it was permitted, particularly if a town has recently adopted specialized code, and then just having that reassurance in the software generated report that it's showing compliance from the HERS rater's point of view.
A follow-up question here. What are building officials confused about, big picture?
Yeah, Becca, do you want to elaborate?
I think, as we all know, there's some building officials who feel really confident about their knowledge of HERS and what the HERS report means, and there's plenty who are very unclear about the requirements, and I think they would feel better in general if they had to do less wondering about what they're reading and just had a very clear, like, yes or no, does this pass, does this not? Part of our work that we're taking on is involving basic 101 one-pagers for like how to read a HERS report. So we're all working together on the same effort, but I think some in the building inspector community just want it to be like that much more obvious about whether or not the building passes. I'm sure for you folks, it seems very
Maybe
obvious.
to add to that, it's not just that the building officials don't know, it's like there's sometimes sort of citing situations where like the preliminary HERS rating comes in for an all-electric home, and then the final home shows up and there is like a gas range in there, or there is a gas fireplace in there, or there's something else, and they're like, okay, is the HERS rater saying this is an all-electric home, or is the HERS rater saying this is a mixed fuel home? And then what's the HERS rating that this needs to meet? Like, they don't want to be the bad cop here telling a builder that in their opinion, they're disagreeing with the HERS rating, whatever. They're like, let's have a clear, is this all electric? Is this mixed fuel? Was this permitted before the town adopted specialized code or after? So that there's just not that gray area of builders being tempted to sort of say, well, it's, I've got a HERS certificate here that's good. I'm good to go, right? Like they just want to kind of make it very cut and dried. So I'm curious if there's any comments.
We do have a pile of other comments here. We're coming up to the hour mark. I don't know how much more you'd like me to read off for you to comment on. Would you like me to read a couple more comments and then wrap up, or?
Yeah, let's take a couple more comments if that's okay, and then we don't want to go time for folks.
So there's a comment here. Risk. This is what I'm saying. The inspector should check along the way. They should see what the gas piping is at Ruffin. They should know if it was all electric. So that was one. I think that was in reference to what you were just talking about. Another comment here is, I agree with the ERV installation comment. Very few HVAC installers are doing it properly. As a whole, the reduction in HERS scores has come with very little education to tradespeople, building inspectors, and HERS raters. Well, I think we are moving in the right direction. The education for all the people that need to work as a team to make the home successful has been poorly implemented. It should be coordinated so all trades are getting up to speed together so that we can solve problems. Also, vapor barrier issues are starting to show up in new construction builds that are installing zipboard on the exterior and plastic vapor barriers on the inside. This is going to lead to many problems. Architects should be working with HERS raters from the start instead of putting in prescriptive requirements on plans that just create confusion for anyone that is trying to use them. Thanks for any consideration here. So that was one comment. For your information, the SOIC towns, Needham, for example, has effectively gone all electric and it is working. It is the optionality in the suburbs around fossil fuels that is not working. And then 90% of all plans done are not by architects. The details are lacking. Those two were from the same person. Let's see. So the new heat pump winter electric rate should help moderate the cost of all electric, but it's still new and it seems not many people are familiar with it yet. All electric homes can't be sold in the suburbs. It's not a transition, it's a problem. They cannot sell the homes. Not enough inspectional requirements of building inspectors make them check more things, put it on building cards. So just going through the ones that are here. Trying to get the building official to accept the credits for insulated concrete using an Excel spreadsheet. Until it makes it into the ecotrope, it's not a choice or checkbox building officials will not accept. ERVs are a disaster. There need to be a separate permit and completion form that the installer has done the job correctly. It is called commissioning. Commercial projects require this. HVAC subs are thumbing their noses at raters and not doing it. Please clarify again which permit date drives the code compliance requirement. Is it the issue date listed on the permit, or is it the date the permit application is submitted to the building department? I think it is the application date, but that can be challenging to uncover.
Yeah, so just to pick up on that last one, it is the date that the permit submittal is accepted. So, and the reason I use those words is that we do sometimes see builders will submit an incomplete permit application and then try and cite that date, and the building official can legitimately push back and say, sorry, if you don't have everything that's needed for the permit, then that doesn't count. But as soon as the full application goes in and the building official sort of stamps to say they've received the permit, that's the date. And so then it's not the issuance date of the permit, which is usually like 60 to 90 days after that. It's that submission date. And that's preferential to the builder because it gives them more chance of getting in a permit submission that's complete before a code change takes effect, in case they were kind of surprised or did the design before a code change took effect. So that's why it's that date. And it isn't a date that you've necessarily been tracking historically, and most of the time it's not going to matter, right? Because once a town's adopted, the code can be stable for years. But in those cases where it does matter, it becomes important.
And how do you find that?
So
there's a question for how do you find that?
Yeah, so in the last couple of minutes, maybe just to reiterate what Becca was saying, like we'd love your feedback. Thank you for taking the time to like let us ask these questions and flag these upcoming opportunities for public comment and potential changes. Hopefully you know how to reach us now, and if you found this kind of thing useful, please let us know. And yeah, we just love to have more back and forth communication.
Great. Well, thank you both for taking time to talk with us today and gather feedback from the rating community. And I do think it's really important for people to share their perspectives so that you're heard. So with that, I think we're going to move into the closing slides.
Unmuted.
Want to take that away?
Okay, so this concludes today's formal program. I would like to thank Ian and Becca so much for sharing your expertise and insights with us. We really appreciate it. And I would also like to thank everyone in the audience for setting aside some time in your day to participate in this. We know how busy all of you are, but we would really appreciate if you took a few minutes to give us some feedback by completing the electronic survey upon exiting the webinar, including any future topics that you might like to hear about. Your feedback is very important to us, and your specific responses will be shared with the NE HERS Professional Development Committee so we can continue to improve our webinars. We hope that you will be joining us for any upcoming webinars. We have one on April 15th with Timber HP on high performance, low carbon wood fiber insulation. The link will be shared in the chat. And please visit anyhers.org/events if you want to learn more information and register for other future sessions. And also look out for webinar email invitations. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Muted.